Bob Peterson was a native of Warren, Pennsylvania, and it was there where he saw some of the great Negro leaguers in barnstorming games. Bob Peterson was a pioneer, for it was his book, Only the Ball Was White, which recaptured a lost era in baseball history in a rich facet of black life in America, which became the seminal treatise on baseball during the black baseball era.
I was a boy in the 30s in Warren, and baseball at that time was everywhere. We had in Warren, we had a team called, or a league called the Sunset League, where adult men, these are not kids, would work the day if they had a job. They'd work their day job, they'd come out at 6 o'clock and play baseball 3 or 4 nights a week. That's how popular the game was in those days. We also had the best players in town then on Sundays and, well, Saturdays, would play teams from other towns. Semi-pros, they get, I did it, and I think I made $10 a game. That was about the scale after World War II. So I played, I saw all the, not all, I saw a lot of the barnstorming black teams. The Homestead Grays came into Warren at least every other year. The Philadelphia Stars, the Baltimore Eli Giants came in quite regularly. They'd play either the local semi-pros or they'd have an exhibition game between 2 black teams.
Warren had in those days, Tom wouldn't even know it, but the field was where Sylvania is now, down over a bank. And there was a football field there for the high school, and then the home plate was near the bottom of the hill. And they would put up a canvas fence around the outfield to make a fence. And all I can recall is that Gibson hit the longest one I ever saw, and I said, without any attempt at checking anything, I said it was the longest one ever hit in Warren County. I started it just because I enjoyed baseball, and it was a facet of baseball that had never been covered. That's how I got into it. But the more I got into it, the more I began to believe that Negro baseball was an important historical artifact, not just of black history, but of American history. It reflected the times, the segregated times that during which it lived. The 20s, 30s, 40s was a segregated. So the more I got into it, the deeper I got into it, the more I thought it was significant beyond sports, that it was an important part of black identity in this country. Next to the black church, I think black baseball was probably the most solid institution there was in black communities.
Were you reluctant to make use?
Not in the slightest. I had nothing but interest in my project and nothing but courtesy in receiving me and compliments when they got the book. Oh, it was wonderful. These men were strangely not at all bitter. Even though they had been rejected from the top of their profession for a period of 50 years, they were disappointed. Some of them were disappointed, but they didn't say, oh, you're a white man, you go and stuff it. They were very courteous and very nice to me. I think I was ever that conscious of contributing to history, although in fact, as I got into it farther, I suppose I did realize that I had useful stuff. And Hall of Fame, of course, was glad to take it off my hands. My problem in interviewing was that it was hard to find the players, believe it or not. I could go out before breakfast tomorrow morning and find 150 surviving Negro League players by lunchtime. In those days, that wasn't the case. They had lost touch with each other. And I'd find one, and he'd lead me to another, and then he'd lead me to another. It took me better part of 2.5 years to find, I think it was 12 players. A lot of the old players I interviewed referred to themselves as colored, which was the original 20s, the teens and 20s. In fact, one of the first Negro leagues was called the Eastern Colored League. Negro then was the acceptable term from, I would say, probably 1930 to the early 60s, when that was deemed slightly derogatory and they then wanted black. Now it's African American. I have trouble. The Monarchs were kings of the hill as far as the black community in Kansas City went. They had booster clubs and regular meetings devoted to the team and honors all over the place.
Bigger than life?
Oh, Paige, obviously.
Yeah.
I don't know, Gibson didn't have the color, color, I put that in quotes. He wasn't colorful in the sense that Paige was, and so I don't think he was ever appreciated nearly as much as Paige.
And strike him out.
Satchel Paige was overpowering fast, and when I first saw him, he had no curveball. He just had a fastball, in and out, up and down, and you knew that you were going to get a fastball, but you had to guess where.
Satchel was really something. Now, I can see him with them big feet. Man, he had about a 16. And he'd plant that big foot out there, and he'd kick like that. And the dust would fly, and the ball would hit the catcher at the same time. I think he distracted the hitters and threw them off balance with that movement he had. He didn't need no windup. He didn't use no windup. He could flail that ball.
Particularly guys with colorful nicknames like Cool Papa Bell. How do you beat that? Or Bullet Rogan. Those are great names, and I think they reflected their personalities to a certain extent.
What happened to Jackie Robinson?
I think by and large they were very supportive. Almost universally, of course, Gibson died by the time Robinson got to the majors, but they were supportive, but they really didn't think much of Robinson as a ball player, believe it or not. They said he was not the best player in the Negro Leagues by far. In fact, most of them thought Monty Irvin was better, as well as some others. But they all were very supportive of him, and they all, of course, laud him now highly for the abuse he took and how he stood up to it and what he went through to achieve what he did.
Agree in your research that of that analysis, Jackie is probably having the right kind of temperament to take on that initial abuse?
Oh, there's no question. I think he was obviously the ideal candidate. I couldn't have done it, and I don't think there are very many black guys who could have done it, taken that abuse without lashing out. And of course, when he was set free, I think it was in '48, he was one of the SOBs in the league in terms of taunting and abusing and being generally obnoxious. In person, though, he's a very nice fellow when he got off the baseball field.
You had done a biography?
Well, I wanted to do a biography on Buck Leonard. I talked to him about, it was probably around 1980, and he said he didn't want a book. He didn't ever want a book written. Well, one was written about him. His autobiography came out about a year ago. So I guess he changed his mind. And then he died, so.
Lettuce, tomatoes, onions, and cheese.
When Homestead Grade was $85 a month, my first season. The most I ever made in colored baseball was $1,000 a month. Of course, now when you went to foreign country, you make a little more than you made over here. I played ball in Cuba for about 4 years and played in Mexico about 4 or 5 years. We got more money for playing than we did over here in the United States. Got treated better over there. Now the 1937, that was about the greatest team I ever been on with the Homestead Grade. That's where we got Josh. And then for 9 years, from 1937 to 1946, we had the greatest team.
But I think, given my limitations of time and money, it's a fairly decent book. The most egregious error in the book is the spelling of Celeron. I'm sure you've noticed that.
Noticed it.
I don't know how it
But you're not alone.
is.